Hello and welcome to the third episode of 2024. Although in real time rather than TV time, this is actually the first bit of content we've put together this year. If that sounds a bit weird, it's because the last 4 or 5 episodes that we produced that span the month or so around Christmas and New Year, we handed into the channel in the middle of December. Yes, even Ignition TV deserves some time off during this wintry festive period, or in South Africa's case, summery festive period. Anyway, that's why now, the week beginning the 15th of January, is the first time, really, that we've spoken to you in 2024. And so we're going to use this opportunity to tie up a few loose ends from the back end of 2023, with Don bringing you a quick comparison ride he was able to make in December between the 2023 and the updated 2024 versions of KTM's smallest street-going naked model. I'm going to walk you very quickly through a few new models and potentially hugely important concepts that made an appearance during the final weeks of last year, and Don will then also be talking with Hero about the latest 4-valve models that will be gracing their South African range for the first time in 2024. Right, those loose ends. Plenty of actual new models to mention that will be available to buy in the coming months from the likes of Benelli, CF Moto and QJ Motor. But before that, let's take a look at a Kawasaki that possibly heralds a completely new direction for motorcycling in the not too distant future. Well, I say Kawasaki because it looks like a Kawasaki. Not surprising, since it is built around the existing H2 SX platform, but this prototype that is apparently due to start racking up real-world testing kilometres from about now, is actually a collaboration between all 4 major Japanese motorcycle manufacturers and the car maker Toyota. It looks remarkably, normal, if somewhat bulky, but as a bike that is at this point just a glorified testing mule, it actually looks presentable enough for delivery to dealer showrooms. I was also going to say that this is the first hydrogen-powered two-wheeler to make a public appearance, which it did in mid-December when Kawasaki Heavy Industries showed it off at a meeting highlighting some of its R&D projects. However, my research assistant, actually my wife, and it's me who's more of the assistant these days, she kindly reminded me of a story that came out just a few days before this, so back in early December. It was when Suzuki gave us a brief glimpse of a Bergman 400 scooter that had been converted to run on hydrogen. Like the Kawasaki, details are extremely thin on the ground at the moment, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on these projects. We are talking, after all, about, and I'm thinking of Kawasaki in particular here, a manufacturer that has successfully and reliably brought supercharging to motorcycling, and just this past year has treated us to a couple of new models that feature either electric power or a combination of both, with the very interesting Ninja 7 hybrid. Why all this interest in hydrogen? Well, basically it's a clean energy source in that the only waste it produces when powering an internal hydrogen combustion engine is water vapour. However, that is to ignore the fact that the vast majority of hydrogen fuel is manufactured using energy that isn't itself clean, and so that largely negates its green credentials. Add in the need to create a fueling network that admittedly could in theory be easier and quicker than the electrical charging stations with which we're currently busy equipping the planet, and you have a potential new power source that is, I suspect, still a long, long way from being ready to help save the world. I have to say, though, that after a few years of wondering whether I was witnessing the gradual terminal demise of the Japanese motorcycle industry from its total dominance of the mid-1970s right through to somewhere around the end of the first decade of the 2000s, developments like this give me much hope that the Far Eastern biking powerhouses of my youth are not giving up in the face of what has been an undeniably impressive onslaught from both the European and Chinese competition. Ah well, enough of the concepts and prototypes, worthy though they are. Let us now take a closer look at those industrious Chinese that I just mentioned. We covered the EICMA Expo in Milan towards the end of last year, but there was so much going on that we inevitably couldn't get to it all, and looking back I realised we seem to have avoided much of the deluge of new models from China. Let's try and put some of that right now, beginning with Benelli. What? Yeah, I know. Benelli is a famous Italian marque with a glorious history, and much of the design work and engineering development is still apparently done in Italy, but there's no getting away from the fact that these bikes are essentially Chinese-produced machines with a fancy Italian badge to give them an extra dose of street cred. Nothing wrong with that either. It's a strategy that has worked a treat, helping make the company's middleweight 500cc adventure model the best-selling big bike in Italy for the past couple of years. This success has undoubtedly given Benelli the confidence to pursue more of its own, how can I put it, design language, and broaden its range to include some new models that, in terms of looks at least, seem to have what it takes to continue that admirable growth in sales. Sometime in the middle of this year they will be bringing us this trick-looking little 300 that is actually a 292cc 29 horsepower version of its existing 250cc single-cylinder motor. The BKX 300 and 300S are essentially the same bike with different clothes, the S being a motard with less bodywork and mag wheels, while its near identical twin is the adventure model with spoked wheels, the front one of which is 19 inches. They look really good, I have to say, and although there's no word on price yet, you can pretty much guarantee, given their track record in the Italian market, that they will be at the more affordable end of the scale. The same design team has also been busy doing some heavy restyling work to its Leoncino maybe. It's Leoncino 500 road and trail models to come up with a rather more contemporary looking Tornado Naked Twin 500. The performance might be average, but the looks definitely aren't. And once again, neither will the price be. So we'd expect the Tornado to sell well in Italy and maybe even in South Africa if there's an importer ready to take the plunge with this hybrid Chinese-Italian brand. Moving on from Benelli, let's take a quick peek at CF Moto. This is a Chinese brand that's been making big strides in the last couple of years, gradually establishing itself as a serious team in the Moto3 World Championship, while learning much in the way of production and engineering from its partnership with KTM, where it is responsible for building many of the Austrian brand's middleweight models. One of the models it showed at EICMA highlighted the benefits of this relationship and showed just how far the company has come, because the 800 NK GP special edition of its standard 800 NK naked bike, a Chinese Duke 790 if you will, is a celebration of those Grand Prix racing efforts with the Moto3 team colours and a healthy dose of top-notch components from the likes of SC Project, Brembo and Erlins. As a sporty naked offering, I'm impressed, but of more relevance to the South African market is this, the 450 MT that features a parallel twin with a V-twin impersonating firing order thanks to its unusual, for this more affordable end of the adventure bike range, 270-degree crankshaft. There's a proper off-roading 21-inch front wheel, a snazzy full-colour TFT display and ABS that can be switched off at the rear. Pricing will once again surely be competitive when it hits dealer floors in Europe later this year. This is undoubtedly a brand with a range of models that could do well in South Africa, but unfortunately I have no solid news on that front at the moment. Right, just enough time left for us to have a very quick look at the maddest, baddest, nastiest sport bike ever to come out of China. It's from QJ Motor. Yes, the same people behind Benelli. And again, it is leveraging an Italian connection, but this time from MV Agusta. The SRK 1000 RC concept is basically the 1000cc four-cylinder MV Agusta Brutale with some bodywork and a set of clip-ons that transform it into a radical Chinese superbike. Access to this technology comes via a deal made between QJ Motor and MV Agusta to produce a 550cc adventure model to go with the 900cc triple-cylinder LXP that will be made in Italy. However, MV, probably pushed by new shareholders Pira Group, KTM to you and me, have since axed that model. So I'm not sure how that will influence the chances of this concept ever making it into production. Not to worry though, maybe KTM will give access to the 1290 Super Duke engine to CF Moto, so they can do something similar with what is actually a much more characterful engine. In QJ's own promotional video, by the way, that refers to the bike as the 1078, the capacity of MV Agusta's donor engine, there is some of the very worst bollocks-filled marketing speak I've ever heard from a motorcycle manufacturer. In fact, everything that's said in the video is pretty much, well, nauseating drivel, fantasy, wishful, nationalistic thinking on an epic scale, so deluded it made me wonder whether I'd possibly accidentally ingested some mind-altering hallucinogenic substance. Apparently, this Brutale in a dress is an example of Chinese engineering and design breaking away from the boring, crowd-following European way of doing things, which is pretty rich when you consider that this is essentially an old MV Agusta European platform now sporting a fairing that the Italians would surely have considered too ugly to have fitted to the bike themselves. Did I just say that last bit out loud? Oh well, being a grumpy old bike journalist without a boss has its benefits for free speech at times. Not that good for my list of invites to international press junkets though, but I'll live with that just to be able to call out mind-bendingly offensive, poorly conceived and written twaddle like this. And on that note of self-indulgent whinging and whining, I think I'll bring this news piece to an end. See you soon.